But anyway, and also we want to send get well wishes, apparently, because I guess now he's in a hospital, Abdullah the Butcher. And a lot of people are going to say, well, you just cussed Nick Gage all over the place and Abdullah the Butcher was the wild and the crazy and the bloody guy and whatever, the blah, blah, blah. And at least Abdullah the Butcher drew money, as I said to Ole Anderson one time. But besides that,
where is that money? I want it. It's
yeah.
mine. Wikipedia says it's mine.
He's back, ladies and gentlemen. It's Slow Devin.
Oh, I'm coming to the hospital.
He had his blood replaced, I'll have you know.
That's right.
But anyway, as far as Abdullah, Brian, from the time that he started working in was it the mid or even the early 60s, maybe, in his first matches, in the 50 years of his active career, he got the reputation, obviously, for the blood and the gore. And it worked because, A, nobody else was doing it or allowed to do it except the Sheik. And the only time the Sheik and Abdullah ever got together was in Sheik's territory when he would bring in his like doppelganger, or in Japan where they were like, oh, it'll be crazy.
The tag team with the worst work rate of all time. The Sheik and Abdullah the Butcher in all Japan.
It was the freak show thing, and it worked for a while. Yeah. But point being, it was the only time that they saw anything like that. He was the version of the Sheik that could go to the other territories because Sheik didn't have time, and etc. And he adopted his own persona, but you didn't have multiple people on the show doing all this stuff. And also same thing with the Sheik formula. If he was going to be a crazy guy and it was wild blood, he was in and out in 6 or 7 minutes. But Abby could work too. And when it was called for, especially when he was with somebody that it either deserved it or might just expect it, and he, Andre, whatever, he could take bumps, he could get slammed, he could get monkey flipped. And when he was motivated, he was there. But he looked the part. And it was an incredible monster gimmick that, again, whether it was a special mystery partner or a bounty hunter or whatever. He lived in Georgia, so he spent a lot of time in Georgia, but he went out a lot because he knew he couldn't be in a territory, even a weekly or a monthly territory, for years and years. It would have killed him. So he went all over because that way he stayed an attraction. But apparently now he's in the hospital and he's 84. Brian, well, you saw Abby in the 90s live. I saw Abby in the 70s live. If you'd have told me, looking at that man in the 1970s, that 50 years later he will still be alive, I would have said you're out of your mind. And he's 84, that I guess he admits to. So that's incredible. Just how often does a guy get to be 400 pounds for 50 years of his life and make it to the mid 80s?
Yeah, smoking cigars. Bad diet.
And I was about to say a diet on the road that probably wasn't the healthiest, even when he wasn't eating at his house of chicken and ribs.
My first exposure to Abdullah the Butcher as a kid was Fun Babyface Abdullah the Butcher in 1990 with Captain Mike Rotunda and Norman the Lunatic.
Yes.
What a team that was. What a group. You want to talk about groups as bad as the conglomeration in AEW. At least these people had some stars like Abdullah, but what a group. Mike Rotunda as a boat captain with Norman the Lunatic and Abdullah the Butcher.
But I'll tell you what, Abby was one of those guys in the 70s, and I still got to see it someplace because he was with Crockett in 85. We were there, got to work with him on cards on a number of occasions. And in some places he could still do it, but as he would raise the fucking tension level in the room when he came out, it was like people tensed up and you didn't know what between the look on his face and the size of him and the just overall shit that he did. People gave even the marks that might want to take a poke at some of the heels gave him a lot of fucking room because they didn't know what the fuck was going to go on. And if he was doing the thing where he just came in and it was crazy, then it was 7 minutes and the people were fucking whooping. But he had a presence that people were scared of in those days, and it was the way that he, just transformed into Abdullah the Butcher instead of being Abby. Hello, Abby in the back.
He had this talent where you would watch him like shuffling around. And he was really good at having like this look on his face where you believed he was kind of not slow, but just like there was something off with this man. And he had this ability to be shuffling out there with that look and just all of a sudden like rush and move quick to the point where you're like, oh my God, this guy's crazy. He was really good at playing that role. When I saw him in 1990, 91, he was electrocuted at Halloween Havoc.
Oh God, I know. I hated that.
But I never really thought about it, but I never could have guessed his age. Because he always looked younger than he was if you were just exposed to him.
Well, and he never changed where if you looked at pictures side by side from the 60s and 70s to the 90s, you could tell, but unless you looked at him all the time, he would always look the same. And that was, except when he added scars, which added to the whole presentation, as they say. And that, again, the elbow drop, the meat cleaver, that was the most believable fucking finish move in wrestling. Because especially as he got even heavier, when not only it would be the elbow, but one of those mud flaps that would come down home. But he didn't hurt anybody. He could move.
He was the guy, correct me if I'm wrong, that the Georgia office used to get Tommy Rich over. Tommy Rich came in and Abdullah beat him and bloodied him up. And, a young Tommy Rich bleeding, that was what his, that was his business for several years after that. And then he said, I need another shot. I could beat him. And I think they did it again. He got beat up and bloodied. Yeah. I need another shot. I could beat him. And finally, he beat him. And that led to Tommy Rich being one of the biggest babyface stars ever in Georgia.
Ever in the business. At that point in time where the Superstation was just starting to take off, Tommy Rich was the babyface in the business. Remember, Terry Funk told a story. He knew Cable was going to kill all the territories when they were at a West Texas town, had some of the guys from Atlanta, including Tommy Rich. He got out of the car, Terry and Tommy Rich and one of the other top baby faces in Texas, and the people ran to Tommy Rich in like Amarillo. And he was like, oh shit. But that was it. And it was Tommy Rich learned how to babyface. He was from Tennessee. He got in the business because his parents knew Jerry Jarrett, and he debuted right after he graduated high school. I saw like his maybe fourth or fifth fucking match, I think. And he learned from Tojo Yamamoto. He learned from Jerry Jarrett. He had an early program with Lawler for the Southern title when he'd been working like maybe a year. The formula was he was a young, likable, teenage still country boy, just happened to be 6'2" and 230 pounds or whatever, with the blonde hair and the cute face and the all shucks, but he could fire up, and you beat the shit out of him, and he sold his ass off, and he knew how to sell, and he was selling like Ricky Morton a couple years before Ricky Morton. And Ricky Morton took it to the next level. But Tommy, he would bleed and he'd sell and he looked like he was crying and he just and then he would somehow on the verge of death, he would come out with a Fez press and win the fucking thing. People go insane. And they did similar things with him in Tennessee getting started where they just beat on him, but he wouldn't quit and he kept coming back. And then they transferred that to the ultimate with Abdullah, this giant guy that comes out and eats raw fucking chicken or whatever on the air, suddenly savaging this. He was only 20 at that point, 20, maybe 21. And it worked. And the women loved Tommy Rich, especially he's the one that started the young girl revolution in Georgia wrestling.
Well, get well, Abdullah.
Abdullah, who never started a young girl revolution in any wrestling, but helped to, in effect.